U.S. First Lady Melania Trump arrives in Ghana Tuesday, the first stop on a four-nation tour of Africa. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo speaks to VOA about his country's economy and his signature free senior high school program. The World Health Organization and its partners start a vaccination campaign to control the spread of yellow fever in parts of Congo-Brazzaville. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhui-Ewart in for Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tragedy has once again struck migrants attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea to seek a better life in Europe. At least 34 migrants were killed in a shipwreck in the Western Mediterranean, the United Nations Migration Agency said Tuesday, citing the Moroccan Navy and a Spanish aid agency. 26 people survived. The boat had been adrift since Sunday with 60 people on board, according to Joel Millman, spokesman for the International Organization for Migration. A Moroccan official says 11 bodies have been recovered. He added that all of the dead were migrants and none were Moroccan nationals. U.S. First Lady Melania Trump is in Ghana on Tuesday, arriving in Accra on her first solo international trip to Africa. The First Lady touched down mid-morning in the capital, where she was greeted by Ghanaian First Lady Rebecca Akufo-Addo and a young girl who offered her flowers. A welcoming ceremony of drums and dancing by men and women dressed in traditional attire followed. Mrs. Trump clapped her hands and waved at a group of school children waiting for her at the airport. She then visited child health facilities and met caregivers. The U.S. First Lady has focused on children as her signature issue and plans to promote child well-being during her four-country tour, which will include stops in Kenya, Malawi, and Egypt. President Donald Trump has not visited Africa since taking office in 2017. Now, VOA's Jeff Custer has more on the U.S. First Lady Melania Trump's visit to Ghana.
Mrs. Trump landed in Ghana Tuesday morning, where she was greeted by local officials and traditional dancers. She later attended a private tea with Ghana's First Lady, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, at the presidential palace. The White House says the U.S. First Lady's trip, which also takes her to Malawi, Kenya, and Egypt, will focus on children's well-being. Foreign policy analyst John Campbell says if her trip goes well, it can boost the U.S. image overseas.
Trips by previous First Ladies, both accompanying their presidential husbands, but also when they travel alone, have had a very positive impact. Fundamentally, by and large, Africans are quite friendly towards the United States, and they will view Mrs. Trump as a representative of the United States, and they'll be quite pleased that she has come.
Mrs. Trump's visit comes as U.S. Agency for International Development programs for Africa were slated for significant cuts in the Trump administration's proposed budget, but those cuts have been blocked by Congress. Jeff Custer, VOA News, Washington.
Now, the U.S. military says it fired an airstrike into southern Somalia this week during a battle between U.S. and Somali government troops and al-Shabaab fighters. The airstrike killed 9 militants. The U.S. military's Africa Command, AFRICOM, says the strike was carried out on Monday, approximately 40 kilometers northeast of the city of Kismayo, which is in the southern part of the country. A statement from AFRICOM said no civilians were injured or killed in this airstrike. Efforts by the United States, European Union, and the African Union peacekeeping force, AMISOM, is geared to help and defend Somalia's central government against the Islamist militants. Now, for more on U.S. airstrike in Somalia, VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb joins me live via Skype from the U.S. military headquarters at the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. Carla, thank you for joining us. The U.S. has carried about 20 or more airstrikes in Somalia against al-Shabaab militants. Does AFRICOM feel confident that this latest airstrike is going to make any significance?
Well, Esther, they do. That's what they're telling Voice of America. You mentioned more than 20. They've had 24 airstrikes conducted so far this year. They say that that has killed 100 enemy combatants in those strikes. And they say that the focus and the goal of these strikes is to prevent al-Shabaab from recruiting and training and then plotting attacks. And so they say that this, coupled with last year's strikes, last year there were more than 30 strikes that killed about 200 enemy combatants. One of those was hitting a training camp. And so they say that they're on the lookout to prevent al-Shabaab from grouping up and then carrying out these attacks. And even though you do see attacks, they say that the focus is preventing the recruiting and the training, and they are successful in that.
Now, Carla, just yesterday, as we've mentioned in the news, the Islamist militants targeted a European Union convoy. Does AFRICOM feel that there's a concern here, especially for Western nationals in Somalia?
Right. Well, of course, any time that there is an attack, the U.S. military is very concerned. Do they think that al-Shabaab is seeking out Westerners for attacks? That's too soon to say, but clearly, al-Shabaab has been targeting Westerners for years, so this really isn't anything new. But what the United States wants to focus on is preventing future attacks, and that's through the training of the Somali forces.
So when you look at reports such as one saying that the militants are training they're recruiting and training more al-Shabaab fighters, they are also performing military exercises. As far as AFRICOM is concerned, do they think that al-Shabaab is expanding its base in Somalia? And does this combined effort of the U.S. airstrikes, the European Union, and even AFRICOM helping in any way to control this group?
Well, Esther, let's be clear. Let's look at the reports from the South just over the last few days. You can see al-Shabaab has taken several towns. So al-Shabaab is still clearly a major threat in Somalia. But what they're focusing on, the United States is focusing on keeping the African Union troops in Somalia. There are more than 20,000 of these African Union soldiers there. And the United States says that while the Somali government and the Somali military are trying their best to fight al-Shabaab, they're not yet strong enough to take on this threat on their own. And so they point to some expanded strikes in Kenya. They look to their ally, Kenya, and say, look, you need to take care of this problem at its source in Somalia. Don't let it creep out into your country and have even bigger problems as well. So the United States continues to push this with its allies. In fact, there's going to be a AFRICOM Senior Enlisted Leaders Conference coming up later this month. VOA is going to have exclusive access to that conference. I will be attending in Germany, and we will get you more information as we get it in.
Carla, many thanks to you. We'll look forward to that report as well. VOA's Carla Babb reporting live via Skype from the Pentagon. According to the United Nations, 783 million people live below the international poverty line of $1.90 a day, including up to 42% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa. The UN Sustainable Development Goal 1 aims to end poverty by 2030. During the UN General Assembly last week, Africa 54 caught up with Sani Dangote, Vice President of the Dangote Group and President of the Nigeria Agribusiness Group. He says agriculture is one of the keys to addressing poverty.
When you look at the majority of the people in poverty, they are all living in the very rural areas. Some of areas are living in the society, in the urban areas, but they're all migrating from the rural communities to the urban cities. Now, the most important is to go into the territory and start investment. And what is the area of investment in such areas? It's mostly the agribusiness. And agriculture is not only about farming, it's all the total value chain. When you look at the value chain, it means that the greater percentage of our economy depends on development of our agri values. And the poverty is the feeder of corruption, malnutrition, illiteracy, unemployment, and all other vices that are in the society. But once we have this, people being given the opportunity to harness their values, being able to add value to what they produce, better price for what they produce, being able to add better inputs into their farms, then they will get higher yield per hectare. They have better income. They can afford all the social services that we can, the society can offer to them. But denying them the opportunity to bring about the value of their potentials is perpetually keeping them in the poverty-stricken system. No amount of donation, no amount of gift, no amount of grants can never get them out of poverty. And the population is on the increase, which means the number of the poverty, the number of people in less than $2 in income is increasing. The number of desperation is increasing. We can see the insecurity is coming out, virtually in every city. And just because the number of population is exploding and people have no hope, and the area where we can give them hope is truly agriculture. And if we can focus on agribusiness, definitely in the shortest time, we'll see the change as overnight.
So how do we share the responsibility?
Alhaji Sani Dangote says healthcare, education and tackling inequality are also very critical. However, addressing poverty can help other aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, in a sit-down interview with VOA, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo talked about the economic challenges his government inherited from the previous administration, as well as the implementation of his signature free senior high school program policy for all Ghanaian children. He is the Ghanaian president with VOA's Peter Clotty.
What is the economy we inherited? 3.6% rate of growth. 73% debt to GDP ratio. We were in a deep hole. Getting out of a deep hole is not something that is done overnight. But clearly the foundation, the platform is being laid for a more prosperous, a more vigorous economy. The only way we're going to deal with problems of unemployment, which for me is the major priority in Ghana, is by expanding rapidly the Ghanaian economy and thereby creating more jobs. So you look at virtually all the indices of economic performance and management, and you can see that our administration has made significant steps, advances compared to what we inherited. That is not to say that we don't recognize that there are difficulties. The one district, one factory policy, it is meant to galvanize rural industrialization.
But some of your critics are saying it was just a mere party slogan just to win political power.
It's happening. They just should open their eyes and forget, instead of just listening to themselves, opening their eyes. It's happening every day. More and more and more of these factories are being established. We're putting down the infrastructure, not just for them, also for agriculture. Warehousing is taking place across the country, in every district, so that the surplus, the storage that we've had problems with in the past, now we'll be able to find a way to store our foodstuffs. The buffer stock is also working. All of these things are happening in order to give our economy greater resilience than the economies that we've inherited so far.
What about the fight against Galamsey? Because some Ghanaians said that foreigners are coming to illegally mine Ghana's natural resources, while Ghanaians are being prevented from doing so. What structures are you putting in place to resolve some of these concerns that Ghanaians have?
Something like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Professor Kwabena Frimpong Boateng, world-famous scientist, very deeply concerned about this matter, who's chairing this cabinet subcommittee, laid out a roadmap of things that have to be fulfilled before the ban is lifted. And part of that is, first of all, vetting the miners. That process is going on very vigorously. And in the process, enabling us to identify the Ghanaian and the foreigners. And then we can be in a position also to take actions that are necessary. It would be completely against the grain for me to come and dispossess Ghanaians from activity, only to hand that activity over to foreigners. That's not me. My government is not about that. That is not what is happening. I'm also deeply persuaded about the validity of the course that we have chosen to deal with the problems of Ghana. And I sense that the overwhelming majority of Ghanaians are still very strongly behind my government because they see the sincerity with which we are going, and also the effectiveness of the measures that we're taking. The most, of course, spectacular success so far has been the senior high school policy. Right. We said we were coming to do it. They said I couldn't do it. They made the same remark as you just said, that this was all
a political gimmick.
A political gimmick, seeking votes.
Right.
Today that we have done it, they're now saying, oh, the way I'm going about it is not right, this, that. I hear some comment has been made that it is going to be reviewed. But this is the system we have chosen. I'm very happy about it. A system which is about open government. Government acts, opposition, other people comment as they wish. And at the end of the day, the Ghanaian people will, at the end of the accounting period, the end of the 4-year period, they will make a decision and decide for themselves whether what has been done meets their expectations or whether they think that other people should come and take up the relay. This is where we are, and I'm comfortable with it.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Shante, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Still ahead on Africa 54, how did Namibia manage to reduce its HIV infection rate? We'll hear from Namibia's president, but first, a look at Tuesday's headlines. It's time now for our health report, and joining us is Africa 54 health correspondent Lenore Mudu, who recently sat down for an interview with the Namibian president. Lenore?
As the world aims to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, some African countries were able to make some progress toward the first set of goals, the Millennium Development Goals of 2015. Observers say Namibia was one such country as the rate of new HIV infections was reduced by 2015. During my interview with Namibian President Hage Geingob at the United Nations in New York, I asked him what strategies were used to tackle the HIV/AIDS epidemic.
Well, when we were hit by HIV pandemic, that's one of the worst hit countries, Southern Africa. Once we put our hands on something, we had all-out onslaught on it, educating people. The question of what you call stigma, to remove the stigma first, we the leaders go into the places holding people and so on, hugging people, because there was a fear if you touch a person with HIV, you will also get AIDS. So we had to remove the stigma. And then openly, our Minister of Health is here really working with the masses of people and education in schools, and talking, like my wife, talking to young girls about sex, which is a taboo topic in African homes, or we have bypassed that. So people have to be educated. And it's education by talking to them, and condoms and so on, all these taboos we broke. And churches are not that happy that you can tell girls to have condoms, but you have to do that. Otherwise, we're not controlling it.
In the installment of my interview with President Geingob of Namibia, it discusses further some priorities towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals as well as land reform. Now to Congo-Brazzaville, where the country, in collaboration with the World Health Organization and its partners, have started a vaccination campaign to control the spread of yellow fever in the port city of Pointe-Noire and its surrounding areas. More than 1 million people, starting at 9-month-old, have been vaccinated against yellow fever in the Republic of Congo port city of Pointe-Noire. The 6-day campaign was organized by the country in collaboration with the World Health Organization and its partners. Dr. Ibrahima Sosé is the WHO's Emergencies Director for Africa.
Our approach is to prevent yellow fever epidemics in all Africa. So Congo is one of the 27 countries at risk. Since one case of yellow fever was confirmed in Pointe-Noire, we are organizing this campaign in support to the government to protect the population at risk because the yellow fever vaccine coverage is still low in Congo.
The immunization drive is a response to a laboratory-confirmed yellow fever case which tested positive in August this year. Since then, no other case has been confirmed in the country, but more than 200 suspected cases have been reported since the beginning of the year. Most of these notified by the health authority in Pointe-Noire. Urban outbreaks are of particular concern, and Pointe-Noire is the country's economic capital with a population of more than 1 million.
Yellow fever is a deadly disease, but luckily we have a highly effective vaccine which is protecting people for their entire life. It's a lifelong protection. So acting very quickly to protect everybody in the population is the best strategy we can implement.
After declining for many years, yellow fever outbreaks are now on the rise around the world. Dr. Fall explains why.
Yellow fever is emerging because of many conditions, many factors, determinants. If you look at the rapid urbanization, the poor environment management, this is leading to the climate change. This is leading to the proliferation of mosquitoes. We need to improve our environmental condition to prevent yellow fever, but also other diseases.
Yellow fever is an acute viral hemorrhagic disease transmitted by the Aedes mosquitoes and can be deadly. It can be prevented by an extremely effective vaccine. Now, the 2018 Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine has been awarded to James Allison of the University of Texas and Tasuku Honjo of Japan's Kyoto University for their discoveries in cancer therapy. The Nobel Assemblies at Sweden's Karolinska Institute released a statement on awarding the prize. Quote, Allison and Honjo showed how different strategies for inhibiting the brakes on the immune system can be used in the treatment of cancer. The Prize for Physiology or Medicine is the first Nobel Prize awarded each year. The prize comes with an award of $1.1 million. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Esther, back to you.
Thanks, Lenore. Be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Now, next up is a very heartwarming story about a special guest. His name is Mugabe Bienkia. While his mother was pregnant with him, an ultrasound indicated that her baby was a girl, and she planned to name her Philomena. But instead, she gave birth to a boy. In 2014, at just 22 years, Mugabe suffered 2 strokes within a week of each other. Making a remarkable comeback, Mugabe has now authored a book driven by the emotions of this unusual turn of events in his life. Mugabe, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, from Philomena to Mugabe. Well, every African country has a way of naming kids, and they have meanings. What does your name mean?
So I have 5 names, and Mugabe means the giver. Augustine is my Catholic name, which is the name of St. Augustine. And Ateni means resourceful and cunning snake. Olatokumbo, which is my Yoruba name, means wealth and happiness from a foreign land, and Bienkia means God is with us.
Oh my goodness, because we have a little time here, and I want our viewers to understand this. So now, throughout your life, you were told you're supposed to be this girl, Philomena. How did that make you feel?
I feel like it made me more open to alternative ideas about gender and the social construction of gender, and it made me more open to tapping into the feminine identity within me that all men have, and less confined by toxic masculinity.
Interesting. So you were not disappointed?
No, I was happy with it.
You don't feel mad about your parents doing it? So what now prompted you? You wrote this book, and I want our viewers to take a look at that. You wrote this book. It's called Philomena.
Dear Philomena.
Dear Philomena. And you're having conversations with Philomena. You were supposed to be that girl. How does that make you feel? How do you feel connected to
The reason that I started writing the book was because I wanted a way to get everything off my chest that I didn't feel comfortable speaking to with my friends and family. And so the character of Philomena was perfect for me to just have an unfiltered conversation with. And then I ended up like really falling in love with the creation process and tapping into an alternative identity of mine.
Now, you know, we're supposed to show that book, but then again, I'm thinking, now, in addition to writing, you are also a poet and a rapper. How did that come about?
I started writing poetry and rapping actually before I was writing. And so I have always loved performing because my older brother is also a musician, and so I got into that more naturally just due to copying my older brother. And poetry was just for me easier than rapping because I don't need music, so I can just do it anytime.
Very interesting. Now, you know, you've had 2 strokes, one at age 9 and
3
2
total,
more.
actually.
3 in total, 2 more at age 22. So at some point you also faced death. How do you feel about this, and how do you manage actually to stay upbeat?
Life is too short because I'm not supposed to be here right now. I was supposed to die when I was 9. I was supposed to die twice more when I was 22. And no doctor can tell why I'm still alive. And so one thing that it just taught me is life is too short to take things for granted. And so just take every moment.
Life is too short. That means that's the message you want our viewers to get from this book.
Pretty much, yep.
Pretty much. Mugabe, your story is phenomenal.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for coming on Africa 54. Now, Mugabe, as I said, thank you for coming here, and thank you for writing this great book, Dear Philomena. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. You know the difference between a left foot and a right foot. But what does it mean if you say someone has
2 left feet?
Maybe our 2 friends, Anna and Jonathan, can help us?
Jonathan, what happened to your head?
Well, I've been taking these dance lessons with my new friend.
Were you dancing on your head?